always wanted to be a DJ. Like, I always thought it was cool. I grew up on Howard Stern, all that crap.
Yeah.
And even listening to radio when you're little, hearing, the DJs talk and, when they play a song, like they'll come on the air and then they play a song and they talk in that intro portion of the song.
I used to hate that.
I love it.
You like it when
I think it's the coolest thing.
When they talk over the intro.
Yes. It's called Talking to the Post.
Yeah.
Scott, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Can you go ahead and play a song for me? I want to try it. I'm going to have you try it. Okay. Hey, it's, let's say it's, start again, Scott. Go ahead from the top. Here we go. Hey, it's, I can't even do it. Let's try it again. One more time. Sorry. I'm going to make up a time. Here we go. Hey, it's 11:45 here on a beautiful Tuesday morning in Rochester, New York. We got sports and weather. Is the music gone? Oh, there it is. Do it again, Scott.
Yeah, it's been playing.
You're going to do one too, so hold on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Holy crap, man.
Shut up. I'm not a pro.
Apparently not many people are.
Oh, you're going to do it, smartass. So here we go. Go ahead, Scotty. Hey, it's 11:45 on a beautiful Tuesday. Tuesday, is it? Tuesday morning, yeah.
Tuesday already.
We got Tuesday already. We got sports and weather at top of the hour. But right now, we got Mark Knopfler and Dire Straits. I did pretty good.
That wasn't bad.
That was good, right, Scott?
Yeah,
that was
good.
That was great.
Let's hear you do one. Let's hear you do one.
Well, okay.
He's going to do a different one for you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me look into something that would be good for George.
This one's perfect for George.
Okay.
Right.
I've had no preparation. I'm just letting you know.
Take it back to 85. Go ahead.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the Weenie and the Butt Show. We're really happy that you're here this morning. It's a little bit cloudy outside, but let me tell you, it is going to be a gorgeous afternoon. So don't waste any time. Throw on your bathing suits, grab your towels, and hit the beach.
He's singing already.
Oh, shoot.
You talked right over
it up.
You see,
too long.
You see, in real radio, it actually counts down. There's an
you
intro
can watch
time.
it.
You can watch it.
Is that how they do it?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
So,
Scott, you want to do one?
little ramp.
Let's hear Scott do
Yeah,
one.
let's hear Scott.
He's a pro. He used to be a DJ.
You are the pro. Should be doing it.
Which song would I?
Pick your choice. Pick one of them.
I'll pick one that only has like a 2-second ramp on it.
Ooh, ramp. That's radio talk.
Ramp. Intro.
Yeah.
No. Why don't you guys just move on? I don't have.
Oh, you don't want to do it?
No, I don't have anything set up.
All right, maybe at the end of the show, maybe we'll do a sign.
Maybe we'll have our
guest
guests do one too.
or a swell.
He's an improv guy. I bet he'd be great at it.
Yeah, that's actually.
Introduce our guests and let him do
You know
one.
what?
Stand by, Scott. Go
Stand
ahead.
by, Scott.
I want to hear
pick up a
this.
sign. We are very excited. We're always excited, but we're very excited to bring this guest on today. He is a storyteller, an improviser, and a teacher. And I'm emphasizing storyteller because, as I told this gentleman before he joined the show, we were communicating. The basis of the podcast that Todd and I have created, Curiously George podcast, is on storytelling. People learn from stories. So we are bringing on an actual storyteller who might be able to school us. Corey Rosen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a beautiful Rochester morning. It's
Oh no, you got to do it to the music. That's easy. You ready?
This guy jumping in.
You know Sultan's a swing, right?
Are we just doing it right away?
You know Sultan's a swing?
Yeah, we'll play Sultans of Swing, and then you do
Let's hear you talk up to the vocal. You ready?
All right.
Go ahead,
Scott, will
Scott.
I be able to hear it? Will I be able to hear the music or no?
Sure.
Well, let's see.
Go ahead.
Let's see.
Here we go.
He's going to see what he can do. Okay. Are you heading to Penfield? Okay. Well, you got to watch out for some traffic on Monroe Avenue and take it nice and slow because the roads are a bit icy. Did I make it?
Almost.
That was good.
But you put more flavor in it than we did. That was good. He talked about the icy roads.
That was really good.
He got local and personal, which what he's supposed to do.
How do you know Penfield?
I'm from Rochester. I'm from Pittsford.
Yeah.
What am I? I don't know this. Did I know this?
Apparently not.
I don't
Okay,
know.
well,
I knew he was a Rochester
Okay,
guy.
Don't give me your
let's do
attitude.
take
I'm
two.
sorry, Corey. It's George. He's very cranky. All right.
I hear you. No, I think something I already learned from that experience, it seems easier than it actually is when you're talking over the music and there's this pressure that the song is going to start and it's counting down.
Yeah.
You don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, it's kind of like watching a movie and being like, "Oh, I could do that."
Yeah.
And then the camera starts. You're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And like Scott says, he says there's a little timer when you're doing it as a real DJ. He was a real DJ, Scott.
Yeah.
You didn't know that, did you?
I did know that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I have more appreciation for.
Oh no, DKX. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. I appreciate Brother Weeze more than I ever did now.
He never talked to
When was
the post.
the last time he even introed a song?
Never.
Yeah,
75.
It's been a while. It's been a while since I've lived in Rochester, so that's dating myself.
Bro, this is really great. All right. Anyway, Corey, apologies. So, storyteller, improviser, teacher. Let's just kick off. Look, we're coming out of a very interesting time in history. What's happening with you, like right now at this moment? What have you been doing while you've been holed up?
This moment. So just to give some context for people, I am a Rochester native. I now live in San Francisco, California, and I have made my living for the past 30 years or so in the visual effects and animation industries, with a crossover in performance, because I was always a performer and an actor and improviser. And I wrote a book, and the book has just come out. It's called Your Story, Well Told. And it's kind of a manual for people to tell their own stories better.
Awesome.
Yep. Now, you're also being very modest. I do know, I did do a little research. You've done work on the movie Rent from 2005, The Day After Tomorrow from 2004, and
this one.
Don't Wet Your Pants, Scott. Star Wars Episode. Now, here's what's interesting. Star Wars Episode 4, 1977. So this was on when it was re-released, because you're way too young to have, you would have been in the theaters with us.
Was this the Lucas remastered?
Yes. So my story in a nutshell is when I was in college, I interned at Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic is ILM, Lucasfilm's special effects division.
I just peed.
In Marin County, yeah, I know. And the summer that I interned there was a very fortuitous summer, because it was the summer that Jurassic Park came out. Oh my God. Which itself was a pivotal film, in kind of movie history, but especially special effects history, because it sort of signified the change from puppets, handmade, glass matte painted background, like traditional, what we now call like traditional visual effects, to digital computer animation. So, in terms of like a learning on the job opportunity, it was a great situation for me where I was able to basically learn by doing. And one of the first projects that sort of came our way was this restoration or sort of re-release of the original Star Wars trilogy. So before George Lucas made the prequel films at the end of the 90s, there was this kind of lull that you might remember, where there was like, after Return of the Jedi, there was kind of no Star Wars for a long time, at which point George was basically getting married, raising kids, adopting kids. Like he was just doing his own life stuff like people do.
Yeah.
So rich guys. So what he decided to do is basically restore the original Star Wars trilogy. So one of my first movie credits was a movie that came out when I was 4 years old, but I do technically have an IMDb credit on Star Wars.
I saw that. Sweet. And I was like, this, because at first I'm thinking, he did episode 1, and I was going to like totally just rank on you a little bit, but I was like, episode 4, you're a part of history. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I actually got the remastered DVDs.
I share the blame for ruining Star Wars too. Episode 1, I was part of that. So our generation.
Are you responsible for Jar Jar Binks?
But the next, the millennials love episode 1. That is a thing.
That is a thing.
There is a whole generation of people that is their Star Wars. Jar Jar Binks and Watto.
Really?
There's
a segment of society that enjoyed that, huh?
Yeah, the millennials.
That's their Star Wars.
Yeah, I did not dig it.
Of course you didn't.
Explains a lot.
Because it was garbage.
I like Solo.
Because it was garbage.
Yes.
This is
Solo I actually worked on as well. So,
did you really? I really like that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I thought that was well done.
So I still sort of have a foothold in the special effects. I still work at a effects studio. I work for Tippett Studio, which is Phil Tippett was the animation guy from the original Star Wars movies. He did the at walk. I don't know how nerdy is this podcast. I'm just
George is a nerd.
Yeah,
he's just a good looking nerd.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I get exactly what you're saying. So do continue, because the AT-ATs and actually Imperial Walkers came from the San Francisco pier with the giant cranes that take the containers off.
Look at you.
They look like them.
He's got the context.
Scott didn't even know that.
Yeah.
You go next time you're in San Francisco.
You're right.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this podcast, I did not know that.
You didn't? Because Scott, the producer here, he's a huge movie buff and nerd. So
love you too, Todd.
I actually have a funny Star Wars story. Do you guys want to hear a funny Star Wars story?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. So would our listeners.
I did ruin Star Wars a little bit.
Okay.
And I don't just mean in the Jar Jar sense, like in the original Star Wars, like the Star Wars of your childhood, the original Star Wars. Part of the restoration of the original movie was to add things to it. So does anybody remember that there were scenes added to the special edition?
Yeah, there was the extra. I remember the stormtroopers on the giant lizards in the desert, and then the cantina scene. There were a lot more aliens in there, and even Mos Eisley. There was a lot going on there, and then the explosions are a little different.
About all the extra stormtroopers that they added when Han Solo comes upon them. Originally it was like 4, and then suddenly there's a whole battalion of them there.
And Corey
just
did that.
more of everything.
That's awesome.
Wait, but what's the ruined?
Yeah.
So part of my job, because remember, this is early in my career, like my job was to do restoration. And what that meant was that the original film that Star Wars was shot on had to be scanned into the computer, cleaned up of like dirt and scratches and dust, and then we would add the special effects. So I was at the very beginning of the process to hand paint scratches and dirt and dust, right?
Yeah.
And so for like the opening shot, that beautiful shot where the spaceship, the Star Destroyer, flies over your head and it just keeps going and going.
Yeah, the Rebel Blockade Runner it was after,
Look at you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to nail Scott here.
I told you, Corey.
Sorry, Corey, go ahead.
It's crazy, these two.
Sorry, Corey, please.
I'm sorry, that's a check in the George column. George just got extra points for that.
Wow.
He may not be able to intro a song during the ramp, but he can name check a Rebel Blockade Runner.
Very well.
So I had to clean, not just clean the film, I had to clean the star field. So when I'm talking about clean, I mean there'll be a little white pop on a black background, and it's is that a star or is that a piece of dirt? And I had to discern between needed or not needed. And so, long story short, in the scene where we added Jabba the Hutt, I accidentally erased Han Solo's entire ear because I thought it was a piece of dirt. And frame by frame, I kept erasing the same thing until I looked at it and I was like, no, that was his entire ear. He has no ear in one shot in that movie. And I showed it to the supervisor, who, of course, wasn't looking for the ear. He was looking for dirt.
So it's in there. So on my DVDs of this, there's going to be a Han Solo. Yes, I still have DVDs and I still can play them.
But do you have the VHS tapes? Because it's also on your VHS tapes.
Oh, no, I don't.
I have those.
Wow.
Can't play
and
them.
we're on the Weenie and Butt Show.
Weenie in the butt.
Corey, that's pretty amazing. Wow.
Yeah. So I did help to ruin Star Wars.
Yeah, I love it. We're so
little bit.
Now there's you're gonna get all these hate things on Instagram, and
who is?
they're gonna Corey. They're all gonna once this airs, they're all gonna jump on.
You ruined it.
Yeah. We found him.
Yeah.
So I'm getting now, based on your past, where the storytelling comes from. But what was the pivot? So into this, okay. And I know that the book is more current. So before the book, what was the pivot into? Hey, storyteller, improviser, teacher, all things that I'm very, very fond of. Storytelling and teaching, I'm great at. Improvising, well, you've seen. Yeah, need some work there. But go ahead.
Great question. When I was growing up in Rochester, I was always in the plays in school and, show choirs and all that kind of stuff. So I was very performative and I was kind of an actor. But to be honest, I was kind of afraid of making my living in the performing side of the theater. To me, that was too much risk. It was just it's. I have so much respect for people that put their life in the arts. My brother is an actor in New York. He is doing it and he's doing it well. For me, it was scary. So I moved more into the behind the scenes, the special effects, that side of it. but I never could like shake it. So I was always, kind of, I wouldn't say gigging, but like I was on the side. I was doing improv classes and skits and sketches and making little short films of my own. And this thing came along a couple of years ago called The Moth, which is like a NPR podcast and radio show. And it's basically a forum where people come and they tell true stories on stage. And it's a really good show. Like I would listen to the show. And what I liked about it is that these weren't actors or authors or professionals. These are just people with an interesting story to tell. And I liked it. So I started going and I went to the first show. It turns out that they did in San Francisco. And it's like a competitive show. So I won the show with a story that I told. And the producers from the main like New York office were out in San Francisco for that show. And because I won it, they asked, they're like, do you want to be the host of the show? So I kind of got this crazy night where I went from being a fan of the show to being on the stage and hosting the show. So it really was a great opportunity. And then just being around storytellers, night after night, month after month, I sort of turned that into classes where I started teaching and working with other people on telling their stories. Because in the realm of telling true stories, I mean, we're all storytellers, right? We're always telling stories. It's how we connect and communicate with each other. Some would argue it's how we survive, by sharing our stories and our information with each other.
Yeah, how you learn.
But the fact is a lot of people aren't very good at it.
Right.
Like they'll tell a story that goes on and on. It doesn't seem to have a conclusion. It doesn't go anywhere. And they'll just kind of truncate their own story and end it before they actually get to the punchline or the juice of it. So really the book came out of that, is like, how do we identify these moments in our lives that would be good stories, not just like things that happen, but like a story, and how do we tell them better?
So the teaching came from these classes. So you did the classes, you were hosting the show, you were teaching these classes on storytelling, and then you got approached about a book. And so the book then was your own process, and is it it's stories of other people as well, or? Yeah.
So it's basically divided into three. I kind of divide my own process into three kind of chunks.
Yes,
let's hear that. And it's how I work with my students as well, which is basically like the first part is ideation. Like where what are my stories? How do I find my stories? If I was to just ask you, tell me a story, a lot of people would kind of freeze up, be like, and they would think that they would have to tell like their big story, the time they almost died, the time they fell in love, the time they fell out of love, their marriage, their divorce. And the thing is, we've got millions of stories. Our lives are filled with these stories. It's what happens when you have dinner with someone and they tell you about something that happened to them today. And then they go, oh, that's where that reminds me of this time that ... And we launch into our own memories, our own stories. So it's about kind of taking from the improv mindset idea of being kind of open to exploring an idea, whether if it's a good idea or not, is like just going with it and sort of seeing where that idea takes you. So that's kind of the first part. The second is structuring, like shaping it. And then the third part is performing it, like actually telling that story. So
performing it, besides the obvious, implications of that, do you also work with a lot of authors, independent authors, and help people with would you say this can apply to like a type of like ghostwriting or consultation on books?
Yeah, it really does apply pretty broadly. In my classes I had a minister recently who wanted to tell better sermons. I've had a woman who is a hospice worker who listens all day to people's life stories.
Oh, yeah.
And she wanted to basically be able to communicate and sort of share their stories back with the world and lessons that she's learning from these people at the end of their lives. I had a pole dance teacher, someone who owns a pole dance, who wanted to sort of tell her origin story. And I had an Oscar nominee who wanted to tell an Oscar speech that didn't suck, And so like it could really, in business case studies, personal stories are stories, and we all like to be told stories.
Right.
So I think that it's sort of, I guess I thought of it initially about like the Moth and people getting on a stage and telling a story, but this works in the boardroom as well as it does across a dinner table from someone you're on a first date with.
Yeah. No, and I'm happy to hear you say that, especially when it comes to just on the business side of things. Because again, a big part of this podcast, not so much business, but with everything going on, there's so many things out there right now where, you get, 10 things you should do now, 3 ways to lose weight, right. Blah, 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 all that crap. You
get better sex and 5 easy steps.
Exactly. Right. And you get texts, emails, all this junk.
Yeah.
And we just were like, you know what? No, we just want to bring people on like yourself and just let people take what they want. So there's people today that are going to hear your story. And obviously there's more we have to go into on it. And they're going to, there's certain things that might be like, well, I don't think I'd ever do that. But wow, I never thought of this. I can try this. Or they might be like, hey, you started off in one thing, special effects, and you had this amazing career. You worked on some amazing films, yet you carved out something else that you wanted to do even more.
Yeah.
And you went and you did it. It wasn't all about like, oh, I work at ILM. Because a lot of people get there and they would just be like, oh, I'm just going to stay here for life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. But there's people out there that get into something, but they're still, they haven't found it. And they still yearn for it, but for whatever reason, they don't go for it. And I kind of like that you already had this great career, but there was still something else that you tried to do. And now you're kind of doing, it's like your recessive gene came out and now you're kind of pursuing that. I don't know. That's how I look at it.
I love that. I think that's, a sort of a nice aspirational thing that I was able to find some balance in my life between that, because I really do. I felt like I had this great job that I really did love. It was my dream job. I got it, young, early in my career.
Yeah.
But I also had this hobby, this thing that I liked to do that was different than what I was doing at work. I was spending all this time working on these, some wonderful, some terrible movies. Let's be honest, Twister, nobody's favorite movie, right?
Yeah.
Flubber, nobody's like list of classics, right? Yeah. But I also had this aspect here, and what I've been able to kind of do is to sort of merge those two things of like, here's the thing that I do, here's the thing that I want to do or like to do, and sort of like allowed them to not compete with each other, but to sort of support each other and to work together.
What's the most outlandish story that's been brought to you? That somebody said, hey, I want to tell this story. What's the most outlandish? Or have there ever been one that you're like, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to tell this?
There's a great one that I heard not too long ago where what happens at the Moth at these shows is that people get up on stage. And like I mentioned, they're not storytellers. They're not professionals that tell stories. And so the way that show is structured is there's like a theme. So like all the stories on that night will be around that theme. And so sometimes people just come to the show. They're brought by somebody else and they go, oh, I've got a story like that. And they'll put their name in and not really know what they're getting into. And so this guy gets his name pulled early in the show. And this was pre-pandemic. So he was actually at a theater filled with like 400 people. And the guy gets on stage, and he's like, guy, he's got a mustache and shaggy hair, probably in his late 50s, early 60s. He gets up on the stage and he's just like he's laughing at himself already. And he gets up on the stage because he goes, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I did this. Because he's now watched like 3 or 4 stories that were like heartfelt stories, people telling about their lives and their experiences and maybe, a pet who died. I don't know, just like people telling these sort of like sincere stories. And he goes, the story I'm about to tell, I've never told to anyone ever. Uh-oh. It's like a secret that I've held.
Oh, nuts.
And my 2 kids are here. And one of my daughters is with her boyfriend and his mom. So like already the stakes for this story are so high because we're about to basically watch a man confess a secret in front of 400 people and the people that are the closest to him.
Those poor kids.
And the story was about, those like books like Let's Go and Lonely Planet and all those like travel books that like when you go like backpacking in the summer and open the book and it has all the youth hostels. Yeah.
Yep.
So those are written by college kids. Like they send college kids to go to every crappy restaurant in, Yugoslavia. And then they write, Let's Go Yugoslavia. And it's just like a 2-line summary. Yep. So that's what this guy's job was in college, but he didn't get Yugoslavia. He got like Death Valley, California, where there's like 3 motels and 2 restaurants and a few whorehouses, brothels.
Oh, here we go.
So he was telling about going to a brothel and being recognized by a girl from high school. It's like, hey, Dan, like recognized him in the brothel so he basically is admitted, and this is a guy, he's a doctor now. Oh, so he's admitting this sordid story from his youth. And it's just like the whole audience at one point is, basically shocked and stuff, but also just delighted and amused by watching this guy go through this epiphanous moment that telling his story like released his secret out to the world.
I thought he was going to say kids who were born in a whorehouse. That's what I was, yeah.
That's your real mother.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was an example for me of like, sometimes a story will come out, and then as a storytelling teacher, I'll be like, okay, if I was to work with that person, like how would you now shape that into a better story versus the way that it sort of feels like I just told it, which is more like there's a secret, and then at the end I reveal what the secret is.
Sure.
Which itself is a structure.
You help polish the story. Have you worked with anybody who's worked on a TED Talk?
Oh, good question.
That's a big thing right now. I think a lot of people, the concept of like my origin story is it's a big deal. And I think that that's a challenge for people. So I have like some games that I like to play that help to bring that out. So do you want to play a game, you guys?
Let's play a game.
Oh my God. Perfect.
Here we go. All right. So let's start with George. George, I'm going to ask you in 60 seconds only to tell me the story of your life in 60 seconds. Okay? Tell me when you're ready. And I'm going to start the timer.
Okay.
You only have 60 seconds. So whatever you choose is going to be right. Okay, go. Here we go.
Yep. Born in 1968 to 2 Greek parents. Grew up in the church every Sunday, but not too crazy till I was 16. Loved being in high school, but by junior year was ready to get the hell out. My senior prom date ended up sleeping with some other guy, and I didn't care, so I just left her at the prom and drove home. Oh, yeah, good story. And then went to college, and again in college, wanted to leave junior year, left junior year, moved right to New York City and lived there for over 20 years, and then got the travel bug and moved and worked in London, Amsterdam, Spain, and Australia. And then decided that I knew that at my core, I was a really great leader. So then I started moving into jobs that allowed me to storytell, lead groups of people, and strategize, because I really enjoy that. And that's where I am today.
Great. Okay. That 60 seconds. Way to go.
Okay.
Nice job. Excellent. All right. Todd, it is your turn. You have 60 seconds to tell the story of your life. Are you ready?
Yes, go.
All right. Begin.
I was born in 1969. I was born in Rochester, New York, raised in Norwich, New York, a very small rural town. Moved back to Rochester in 76. Grew up in a fairly easy household, but mother with borderline personality disorder made it a little difficult. I went through school, barely got out of high school. I got out with a D, went to art school in Pittsburgh, graduated with a degree in graphic design and marketing, had nothing to do with it. Ended up working for Wegmans Food Markets for 8 years. From there, I moved on to a catalog company where I worked for 14 years. And now I work with a comedy club here in Rochester. I also do stand-up comedy. I also did a one-man show about my mother, living with a mother who had borderline personality disorder, which I went out and vented to the world and told them all about it. And it was a struggle, but it was something I did. I have a wife. I have 2 kids. Both are out of college, and they both live at home with no intention of leaving. And
stop.
All right.
And stop. Nice. All right. So here's the challenge now. That was, by the way, that was amazing. You guys both did an amazing job, like taking your lives and condensing them into 60 seconds, which itself is not an easy thing to do. But here's the next level. We're going back to George now.
Okay.
You got to do it one more time, but you can't include anything that you've already told us. So this is the story of your life in 60 seconds, but you cannot repeat. So remember, just to recap, you talked about your heritage. You talked about your schooling. You talked about college. You talked about kind of your career stuff. So you have to do the story of your life without any of the things that you just said.
Oh, so you mean even with, career, I didn't mention any companies I worked for or anything. You mean just in general, I can't cover career at all.
I don't want you to cover a career at all. This is the other story of your life. The story that you would tell of your life.
Got it.
And maybe it's
nope. Okay, I totally get it. Got it.
Here we go. You got it. All right. 60 seconds begins now.
So I've got a younger brother, and we had so much fun growing up together. His name's Demetrius, but I couldn't pronounce his name, so I used to call him Mistrius. And the way I used to bully him, when he would finally learn how to sit up, I would walk by him and push him down onto the ground. So he thought it was funny. I just was doing it because I was kind of being a bully. But we had a great time growing up together. He excelled more on the athletic scene, where I excelled more on the social scene. We were both very fortunate to grow up with two grandmothers. Both lived to 100. One we were closer to simply because of proximity. And I was her firstborn on my mother's side. So I used to take her out for fun picnics and whatnot. And then once in a while, I'd invite my brother along as well. But really loved spending time with my grandmother. And then as we got older, we experienced more of my father's side of the family, who we loved just as much, if not more, simply because there were more kids our age. And those relationships still exist today.
And time. Incredible. George, that was amazing. Todd, your turn. Okay. 60 seconds. You can't repeat anything that you've already told us.
I can keep the podcast, Scott. I'm doing all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And begin.
A lot of people don't know I've never drank or done drugs in my life. Main reason, because I grew up with an alcoholic grandfather. I would see him drink, and that's the reason I don't drink. I have two older brothers. One's 5 years older. The other is 4 years older. The one 5 years older was the head athletic trainer for the Sacramento Kings for 27 years. And the other one is a assistant provost at a university. And I tell dick jokes on comedy stages for attention. In high school, I had a couple jobs. I worked at a home improvement center called Chase Pickin here in Rochester. I also delivered pizzas. One time while delivering pizza, a man came with no pants to the door and took the pizza from me. You don't see that much these days. Maybe you do. I don't know. I don't deliver pizza. Let's see what else. My father worked for 32 years for a company called Champion Athletic Wear, which is very popular with the youth today.
And time. Nice. All right. Let's debrief for a second.
Okay.
So you guys both told the story of your life in only 60 seconds, 2 times.
Yeah. And
you told very radically different stories. So what is your observation about each other's stories, or about maybe your own stories?
I know initially, I think I always defer to people don't need that much detail. So I just like to go in at a high level. And then when somebody asks a second time, then I'll go a little bit deeper. And so I guess for me, it's like, here's who I am, and then here's who my family is. And then I guess if you went a level deeper, I'd be like, here's who my friends are, and then get in more like the all the fun we've had together, the comedy, the geeky nerdiness, where it came from, that type of thing. I don't know. I kind of feel it's a little bit cathartic for me.
Yeah. Todd?
About myself? Or about George?
Maybe which in general, which stories, whether it was your own or George's, which story did you prefer, the first or the second?
I preferred the first, just because that was more of me in a nutshell. Like George said, and in so many words. I could have, elaborated on a lot of it, but we only had a minute. Sure. But I feel like the first one was, the better way to go.
Nice. For me, as a complete outsider and not knowing you guys, I liked both of your second stories because for me, they were more emotional. They were about your grandpa and your grandmas. They were about your brothers. They were about your inner lives more than about your resume. They weren't a list of what I've done.
Yeah.
So as a story, I'm more drawn into like the humanity, and like what can I relate to? I know what it's like to deal with alcoholism. I know what it's like to love or lose a grandparent. I know what it's like to fight with my brothers. Like all of the things that make us ourselves are also the things that connect us with other people. So like those are the kinds of things that for a person working on their own story, they have to remember, like get past the list like Chase Pitkin is interesting, but it's like, finding the balance in your life between your provost relative and your dick joke telling stand-up personality and how do those stand in contrast to each other.
Yeah.
To me, that's the stuff of like, that's interesting. That's conflict. That's comedy. That's all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thanks for doing that. I just want to see where that went.
This is, I wish we had more guests.
I'm glad we got to do something like that.
I wish that more guests would I don't know, demonstrate their talents like that.
No, right. Yeah, no, that was cool.
I love it.
It's almost like quick therapy. Like you're sitting.
Storytelling is a little bit like therapy, right?
It is.
Right? Like when you're telling your story, you're not just telling us what happened, but you're reliving it, experiencing it, and we're connecting with you through it. So it is.
No, I love it.
I have to often tell people, like students of mine and stuff that I work with, are like, just, I'm not a therapist. Yeah. I will look at your life as a story and look at the story, but I can't tell you what to do. Like, I don't have that training.
No.
But I can tell you how to fix it in post.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So let's move right into the book, because I know you've got a couple of, I believe, even next week and the next 2 weeks, you've got quite a few events coming up on the book. So so let's talk a little bit more about the book. It's been released, reception. Do you even read reviews? I've seen some really great recommendations from people.
Yeah.
And then
really
talk
exciting.
about some of your upcoming events.
Yeah. So writing a book, it's my first book. It's my first time published. So it's one of those things where, to me, the first thing was like, are people going to buy the book? And then after they did, I was like, oh, and people are reading the book too. Like that, honestly, I forgot about that part. People are like calling me like, oh, I really like this part. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that that's in there. Because I've been working on it for a while. And so, part of the way that I enjoy, I guess, talking about the book is sort of like what we just did. So I've got a couple of events coming up because of the world that we live in right now. Anyone can participate because they're all on Zoom and things like that. And they're mostly all free and put on by local bookstores in different places in Miami and in Chicago and in LA. I'm actually going to be coming to Rochester in July. I don't have those specific dates announced yet, but I'll let you know. And the format for that is going to be different. Like, I don't like those kind of author events where it's like, I am now going to read an excerpt of my book. Like, it's just not that kind of.
It's like buy the book on tape.
Kind of book, yeah. So what I prefer doing is sort of like what we just did, like some games, some conversation about stories, some telling stories, and then some tools that people can use to tell their own stories better. So it's less about listen to what a good storyteller this guy is, and more like, what are some things that I could use to tell my own stories better, or maybe just the motivation to start telling your story?
Right. No. I think that's it's such a useful tool, and it's just something that I've been trying to get across here. And I feel like even from now, just talking to you in this time that we've had, it's like, it's very informative to, not only, how I tell a story on the show or how I might guide other people, in the future on the show, but then I think about work and the teams I have to deal with each day, because the way my teams learn is through stories. And that's the only way I ever learned. That's how people are like, how'd you know, because I'm full of useless information, I think sometimes. Sometimes. Yeah. But I get a lot of that through the stories of mentors I've had or even bosses I've had. And it doesn't matter if you that's what I try to tell people. It's like, sometimes having a bad boss is good. I had one boss that we won't get into it, but he just, I never got a review. There was always a compliment, but it was a backhanded compliment. But I learned so much from this guy because he loved to talk. And you could hear his stories. And so I learned from his mannerisms. I learned a lot about him from what type of questions he liked to ask, how he answered people. You learned what's important to him. And then you also learn what's just like, hey, this is a great thing to emulate, or this is so fucking shallow. Like, I'll never do this, So I really love that type of, I don't know, storytelling to me. That's why when Tom first reached out and I started researching you a little bit, I was like, I don't know, you could have been a co-consultant on the show from our first episode on, I think it's really, really cool.
So Tom, our friend in common, he and I lived together in San Francisco. We had both basically just moved out there, and we're both from the Rochester area. He's from Brighton, I'm from Pittsford, and we found each other. And Tom and I, on paper, are quite different from each other. Tom is quiet. He's athletic.
Yeah.
He's an architect. He's very precise.
Yeah.
And I am probably the opposite in so many ways. I'm sort of a big personality. I'm messy. I'm like a collector. I collect kitschy things. And we actually found a balance together where Tom would be like designing furniture in the house that was all like handmade of wood and like beautiful crafted things, which I would then take a Kermit the Frog and put in the middle of. And it just kind of took something and it made it whimsical and it made it fun. But it also, if it was just Kermit the Frog, then it would be like, who's this creep? Yeah. And yet, like, we kind of found a way to balance each other. And I really enjoyed the time that I got to spend together with him before he moved
God,
on.
you would have hated me. I would have been like, can you bring home this poster? Can you bring home that?
Yeah.
Can you bring home Baby Yoda?
Can you get this
bring
signed?
Something.
Can you get this signed?
Yeah. Do you think George Lucas would come over for wine? Could I go to Skywalker Ranch? Do you know I hiked around Skywalker Ranch? I have photos of it from a distance.
Why? How big is it?
Oh, you went around it?
I went around it,
because
I didn't go on the ranch because technically I didn't want to get shot by stormtroopers. But it's like no, but I guess legally or whatever, people are allowed. It's trails, so they're public trails, so you're allowed to go on those trails, even though probably owners don't like that. But yeah, you walk by at Skywalker Ranch. I still have photos of it on my phone. I love it. It was a beautiful day.
It's beautiful. It's, for people who don't know, it's in Northern California, like Marin County.
Yeah.
These like rolling hills, grassy hills, wild grazing animals. There's a lake called Lake Ewok in the middle of it, which is a man-made lake, but it's actually beautiful, but it also serves a purpose because there's no fire department for miles. So Skywalker has its own fire department, and that is like basically the source of water for the Skywalker Fire Patrol.
That's insane.
See, when somebody says to me, George, how much money do you want to make? I'm like, I want to have my own fire department.
Yeah. You want your own ranch.
Yeah. I want my own fire department.
Want a Lake
I want to be able to say
Ewok.
yep.
Your own municipality.
Yeah. The GPFD. Here they come.
Here they come.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah. And that's what they would do.
That's right. What's that Family Guy one? The sirens in France sound like gay guys. Yeah, like that.
I don't remember that one. That's why. That's good.
Yeah. Sorry, Corey. We get a little nerdy and we get Todd and I do a lot of Family Guy shit.
Hey, Corey.
You're my people. You're
Corey,
my people. Yeah.
So what's it been like with the teaching classes? You have to do them via Zoom, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Or is that what you're doing now? I mean, it's got to be totally different. I would suppose being in person is a lot easier. You get a feel of the person, but what's it like doing it the way we have to now with Zoom and stuff?
Let's be honest, like my world, my kind of thing is improvisation, right? Mm-hmm. Which improv in itself is the kind of craft of like dealing with what's in front of you. Like, let's use what we've got and see how we can, make something out of that. It's like something from nothing idea. It's also about adaptability. So with those kind of concepts, I've actually enjoyed teaching on Zoom from a very practical standpoint. Like in the past, like to teach a class, I'd have to get in my car and drive across a bridge and go to a place where then I would have 10 people sitting around and we would tell our stories. Then I would drive and, so like all of the time that it saves us not schlepping around and not having to like go from place to place has been kind of nice. And so I can actually teach more classes from like my living room or from my bedroom or wherever. That said, I really miss performance, like live performance, like being in a theater, like a comedy club or a theater, and hearing an audience laughing and responding to you is very different when you're doing it in a window on Zoom,
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was just going to ask, so when you think about coming out of this pandemic, have you thought about scaling up a bit? Like, obviously, I think there's more books in you from this. Like, I can't wait to read this book. And then I think you probably have a few other books in you. But then scaling up, is it scaling more to businesses? Because me being in it, I kind of have some ideas. So you and I are definitely going to talk post show for sure.
Yeah,
we're going to stay
absolutely.
in touch.
And by the way, don't forget to give me your address. I'm sending you both a copy of the book.
Oh,
so,
thank you. No, I will for sure.
This.
But I definitely want to engage with you more on other things, because even last night in speaking with my teams, I just had some ideas, and I'm like, you know what? I think we may have something here, because the power of storytelling. Yeah, I do it, but I think it means something different when you hear it from somebody else. And anyway, I don't want to take up the show with that. We're definitely going to talk about it, but it's a big part of the show too.
But to answer your question, yes. Like if there's people who have a company that could be telling better stories, or work with a school, a nonprofit, a storytelling organization, let me know. Check out my website, which is my name, CoreyRosen.com, and you can get in touch for classes, workshops, things like that. Or now, since I'm doing like these author events, I'll basically come just do like a talk at your company about storytelling, and kind of give you some tools for how you can tell better stories, whether they're case studies, customer stories, or connecting with each other. Like it's through the pandemic, that's what storytelling.
Yep. Yeah. It's the customer stories, but it's also the engagement piece, and it's engaging with others, and more like, because people use team and teamwork all the time, but I want to, to me, that's just that's the foo-foo stuff. I want to go deeper, but it's really that customer engagement, because I think about going in the future and coming out of this pandemic, and a lot of our listeners have their own businesses or work for big companies. They've all been saying to me too, it's like, George, we're thinking about how we're going to, reopen, we're going to see this resurgence of traffic and hopefully a surge of new people that want to, hopefully this pandemic has taught people and trained people to want to explore a little more. Like there's a lot, after being home so long and doing your routine, it's like, I could try something different. Let me try here. Let me drive an extra 5 miles and try this or do that. And so with this resurgence and this surge of new people, you can't just open your doors and be like, hey, welcome everybody. It's here's all my stuff. No, you've got to create something different. It can't just be business as usual. Mm-hmm. It really can't be.
I agree. And I think that there's this gestation that's been happening too. Like we've all been cocooned for so long. I feel like everybody has a kind of pandemic story or so. Like a lot of us have changed in the year that we've been sort of apart from our families or close friends or travel experiences or things that we would have done.
Sure.
So I think we're going to hear a lot of interesting stories about how people have changed.
Yeah.
Got it. Two last things for me. One, what was the first story that you actually told that got this whole other career? Like, was there a story you told that got this other career going, that got this thread going?
Yeah. Do you want to hear the whole story or part of the story? Because it's a little long. But I could tell you.
We could do part of the story.
Do it in a minute.
Say a part of the story.
We'll time you.
Or I could do a tease, and then if people want to hear the whole story, it is on my website. So
there we go.
There.
Yep. And I'll put that in the notes.
So this is the story that kicked things out for me. And the short backstory is that the theme of the night was secrets. And in thinking of what story was I going to tell for this show, I went through a list of things that I thought were secrets about me, and they all seemed boring. They were like, that's not really good. That's not really a story. And then I started thinking, what's a secret I know about somebody else? Or what's a secret that somebody trusted in me that I maybe betrayed? Like I started to expand the parameters of, it's not just my secrets that I'm confessing, like that guy I told you about, but like what's another secret? So it reminded me of something that had just happened about 6 months earlier, where I was cleaning out the apartment of an elderly relative in Long Beach, California, who had just died, a family member, and he didn't know he was going to die. Like he had gone into the doctor for like a routine procedure and ended up dying. So it was one of those things where like he hadn't like necessarily like prepared the playing field for this. And I was in his apartment the first time I was in his apartment before anybody else had been in there, and I discovered his secret. Mm-hmm. So that's what the story is premise. That's the tease. That's the porch of the story. Yeah.
Can we guess what the secret is? No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
No.
totally. I'm not going to tell you right now, but I will say that the structure of that kind of a story is exactly that. I want you to be guessing. I want you to be waiting for the secret, to be listening and waiting to what is the secret. So as you tell the story, anybody who's telling a story, what you really want is you want the audience to not to be 3 steps ahead of you, but to be like, along for the ride and interested in not just like what happens, but how it was. So
how old was this person?
That's really the fun of storytelling.
How old was the person?
He was 82.
Oh, okay. I was going to say bondage, but I'm going to...
Good guess. Good guess.
Oh, thanks.
You're right.
I was in the ballpark.
Right. That was the secret.
I was in the ballpark. George, do you have a guess? You want to venture?
You were in the ball gag.
The ball gag.
Yeah, you got there.
I wouldn't know what that is.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's my Cousin Norman
guess?
story. If you're looking for it,
you don't
it's
have a guess?
Cousin Norman.
I don't have a guess.
So I have it. This is what we need to do.
Okay.
Because this was such a great guess, and time goes so quickly. But I think what we need to do is get Corey, Tom Cross, and Scott, and all of us just do movie stuff. Do a whole episode about talking movies. How great would that be?
That'd be amazing.
I'm super down.
Do you
for
know
that
Tom
right
Cross?
Did you ever meet Tom Cross?
don't.
He's from Brighton too.
from Brighton.
He's the film editor. He did
Whiplash. He won an Oscar for
and
Whiplash.
He just finished Bond 50.
Yeah, the new Bond. Yeah, so if we get Scott, the three of us and Tom, I think that would be a really cool show. I don't know what we would base everything, but just talk movies, and I would love to do that.
Let's do it in May. I love doing it in May before theaters and everything really get going again.
Scott, you want to play?
Corey, would you be up for
definitely.
that?
I'm totally up for that.
Cool. Let's do that.
I love it. That's a great idea.
All right. Bye.
That's a really great idea. Anyway, last question. One quick thing.
Yeah.
For budding authors, storytellers, leaders, one piece of advice you could give them that they could walk away with today and try out this afternoon.
I think the best advice that I could give to somebody who kind of wants to, I think a lot of people that aspire to write have the same criticism of themselves, which is like, I should just do it. I should just do it, because their problem is that they're not writing, is that they're talking, they're thinking about writing. They maybe blame writer's block or that kind of thing. So my advice is just do something like tell your story to someone. It feels less precious than sitting down and writing your story. Something that held me back for a long time from actually doing a lot of writing was this fear of the blank page, or this fear of it being bad or being okay. It's okay to be okay. If you say, I think I've got this story to tell, just try telling it to someone. Call somebody up and say,
Agreed.
Hey, I've got this idea for a story. I'm just going to tell it to you. That's getting you sort of over that first hurdle and on your way. And back in the day when, back when there was people would do things in person, I would sometimes do this in like Lyft or like Uber. I would get into like an Uber and I would have a captive audience. I would say like, hey, can I tell you a story? Like I would have a complete stranger and I would basically force that, because I never had somebody say, no, you may not tell me a story. Like everybody wants to be told a story. Yeah. And I would tell that person a story, and then I would get real time, honest feedback from that person, usually in the form of like, oh, that's pretty good. Or they would laugh, or they would ask questions. Questions are good, because then that indicates like, oh, I need to go into more detail about that. So my advice is tell a story to someone.
Tell the story.
Yeah.
And then go to the blank. Tell the story, then go to the blank page.
You got to hear it.
Rehearse it once or twice.
Because writing itself scares a lot of people, because once it's written down, it feels precious. It feels like I worked so hard on that. I can't change it, Yep. So telling it, speaking it feels a lot less precious.
Agreed.
You can just say it.
And to follow up with that, I got to tell you, I've been doing the verbal emails. I review them before I send them, but instead of typing an email, I literally just do a voice email, and it comes out so much better. Instead of just sitting there going like, it's like it's like almost like a doctor, like so and so with a heart attack. Don't forget to throw in a stent and make sure I get the tuna on rye.
Right, it's the easiest way to do it.
It's faster. You say it the way that you want to say it. You're not sitting there like, in reference to like you're not writing it.
I love it. Well, cool. Corey, thank you so much for your time and calling in from the West Coast all the way from San Francisco. Ladies and gents, we've been talking with Corey Rosen, storyteller, improviser, and teacher. His new book, Your Story Well Told, is now out. You can grab it on Amazon. Don't be shy. And Corey's also going to be doing a series of podcasts coming up and some appearances. You can go to CoreyRosen.com, CoreyRosen.com. and check it out and check him out as well.
Corey, check him out.
Yeah. Corey, thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you in May with the rest of the gang when we do this movie thing. Todd and
that'll be a lot of fun.
Todd and I are going to, it's a great idea. So thank you for that.
I'm an idea guy.
You are an idea guy. And we will work out what that's going to look like, and we'll have you guys back on in May. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And then, as I said, Corey, I'm going to send you an email separately. So we'll stay in touch because I do think there's a couple things I'd love to get from you, and hopefully maybe there's some business we can do.
Yeah.
I feel like Scott should play a song now as you wrap it up and you do the off ramp. No.
Todd and I do a quick summary. That's it. There we go. Thanks so much, Corey. We appreciate it. And I will be I'll be in touch with you this afternoon. Thanks so much. Take care.
Now you see what I loved about that whole interview. Yeah. Like I could have gone just with George Lucas stuff. I mean, that's why I brought up that idea. I mean, not that I'm not downplaying why we brought him on with the storytelling. No, but when he hit that, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I'm sure Scott was the same way, you know, oh my God, movie guy.
I was frothing at the mouth when I saw all that. And I was like, I got to talk to ILM. And that's one of the things Tom Gastel said in the chat. He was chatting me and he said, yeah, a friend of mine he used to work at ILM too. Yeah. And I knew, I didn't have to spell it out. I knew exactly what that was. And I already knew I wanted that.
No, it was great. And then the storytelling, all that stuff, even what he was just talking about when, you know, to talk it out and hear it out that's what I do on stage. When I go up and do stand up, I'll go up with a premise. I don't write it out because I'll just fumble over it. I just go up, try it out, put it out there, see how it works, listen to it back, and then, you know, fine tune it from there.
Yeah. So. And what's great is that just having Corey as a guest and the fact that he had one career, he still has it, and he's built this second career. It just kind of validates everything that we've been saying, and that storytelling is probably the medium that's the most important. Whether storytelling makes a great movie, it makes a great speech, it makes a great meeting, it makes for great advice, and it's a great tool for learning. I think some of the best teachers, think about some of the best teachers we had. There weren't many growing up in school, but some of the best teachers we had were the ones that had those stories.
Right.
So guys, that's the advice. Storytelling. Say
goodbye, George.
Goodbye, George.